Aotearoa's Hauraki Gulf Marine Park, Tikapa Moana and Te Moana Nui Ātoi, stretching from Te Arai to Waihi. Beautiful, biodiverse, unique in our world. A treasure for tangata whenua, it's always provided what we love and what we need. From above it looks spectacular, but beneath the surface, it's a different story. It's actually on the brink of ecological collapse. How did this happen? And what can we do? In this series, we'll take a deep dive into the Hauraki Gulf to understand what is making our sea sick. In this episode, we look at more harmonious uses for the Hauraki Gulf. What about aquatourism? Is that worth looking at? What is it even?
A lot of New Zealanders associate going for a dive with getting a feed. And that only really happens here. Most places in the world, diving is done as a recreational activity to go and see the beautiful wildlife rather than to catch the beautiful wildlife. You know, you can make a business that is focused on regenerating an environment and survive.
People will come from miles to here on a summer's day just so they can see a big snapper up close and things like that, or kind of have that natural experience. I really do think there is those rights for us to be able to see this biodiversity and experience those sorts of things.
I have a lot of Asian tourists who are quite happy just to see seaweed. They are very, very happy to do that. There's definitely a place for sea tourism in New Zealand, and perhaps the idea of expanding the reserves and expanding the areas that are no fish zones or no take zones, for example, could be beneficial, absolutely.
It's a world-renowned destination for fishing and everyone wants to come here. It's a huge industry for us and for the fishing tackle, for, you know, you think about even accommodation, for where these people stay, it's never ending.
Right, so we have groups coming in, they stay in our lodge for 5 or 6 days. They bring in probably over 20K into our economy for their short trip. We don't allow them to take any fish out of the country. You can, but we say no.
You know, I'd take the opportunity to be on the water and with mates on a charter. I think to be out here, it's my happy place. So, you know,
The Hauraki Gulf does have some unique features.
Supports a huge amount of biodiversity. I know that it's a unique ecosystem. There are animals that come from around the globe to feed, to populate and that sort of thing. So it's an incredibly interesting and special piece of water.
New Zealand has been quite late to the party around is the value of the marine environment from a tourism point of view. For a country that has this incredible clean green reputation, it's a shame that we haven't got a clean blue reputation as well. And it's something that really I think we could be working forwards and really making the most of too.
Are there other ways that we can create economic value whilst enhancing our marine environment? Is aquaculture an option?
Regenerative ocean farming, like using multi-species, will actually revive our Gulf. And it's not only going to supply the demand for seafood protein, it's going to clean up our waterways, it's going to provide local communities with jobs, and it's going to provide a whole heap of other social benefits as well.
So GreenWave is an opportunity for New Zealand to lay the foundation for seaweed farming and seaweed cultivation.
The incredible ability of seaweed to sequester carbon dioxide. So climate change, water quality and biodiversity impacts are a really, really big part of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
GreenWave New Zealand is piloting a regenerative ocean farming system based around Eclonia. That's a seaweed that's currently used for the development of alternative fertilisers.
So we help dairy farmers look at soil, especially around soil management, stock management, nutrient management, and instead they use a seaweed biostimulant to help support the life in the soil.
There's huge opportunity to decarbonise agri, improve water quality through the use of seaweed-based products.
Well, we're trying to find the reproductive kelp in the wild, take it back to the lab, get spores from it, the seed, and then use that to seed gravel with the intention of putting the gravel back into areas where the kelp is dying out and needs restoration.
Kelp are actually ecosystem engineers, so they actually build a living habitat for all sorts of marine organisms, so everything from your school sharks and snapper, crayfish, right down to all the tiny little microinvertebrates that they all feed on.
Everything relies on the kelp in some way, so it is important that it is there and it is being looked after.
What about mussels? They were the first off the block. Is there still potential there?
Over the years there's been a lot of water space consented, and now there's perhaps about 3,000 hectares. But our mussel take, our annual production hasn't really changed or improved from 25,000 tonnes for 14 years. And that's telling us experienced mussel farmers that we've come close to what we can probably grow in mussels in the Gulf, maybe 30,000 tonnes.
Conservation took over our life starting from the land to the sea. And sustainable aquaculture, I mean, there's 4 million oysters on our farm today, and some of those oysters are filtering 5 litres of water a minute. After a significant amount of rain, you'll see from the runoff that the water is all, muddy, and the oyster farm is completely clean.
We've cared for ages about happy, healthy, free-range chicken eggs and frolicking lammy lambs. Why don't we care about our seafood's life story?
In terms of provenance of land miles and sustainability, 90% of our oysters go to the Auckland market, and they are live and fresh, and we know that where they come from is a beautiful, clean marine reserve bay.
People don't ask, where do you get your fish? They love to know the farm, where you get your beef from, where do you get the chickens from. They're really concerned about that. We're struggling getting a supply of some real interesting fish other than the usual suspects like John Dory, snapper, etc., hapuka. Kiwis love snapper. It really does my head in.
I don't think the New Zealand public are fully aware of where their fish is coming from, but also how it's caught. So what we do here is talk a lot about provenance, catch method, and educate the diner. We're not promoting any bottom trawling, seining. It's all sort of from day boats, hook and a line.
So trawled fish, it's come up in a net where it's all compressed against the net, compressed against the other fish. And bruised, just, it's being pushed against. So the quality of the fish is not there compared to something that's come up on a long line with a hook in its mouth, been ickied and put straight into an ice slurry. The fish might be the exact same species of the exact same size, but the finished results are years apart.
We only use line caught fishing, never like industrial way of fishing now. I think it's for the fish and for the customer. Double better. So yeah, it's really important for us.
We also operate a number of longline vessels, so we've got a combination of trawl and longline. And I definitely would throw down a challenge to someone to have a look at a PSH caught fish that is put in an ice slurry, set it next to a longline fish, and I challenge you to tell the difference.
Seafood provenance and sustainability is important. As a chef, as a restaurateur, absolutely. It gets a little bit harder when we start using the more common or preferred fish, the snappers and the gurnards, to actually know necessarily where they are sourced from at times. The consumer should be asking and wanting to know. More importantly, but equally, the restaurateur, the chef, the staff should know where it's from.
Fish and chips, yeah, it's a big part of New Zealand culture and heritage, and you see fish and chips on every corner and every neighbourhood. But yeah, some of them are lacking a little bit and a little bit stuck in the past, and particularly in terms of quality. As people's food cultures have kind of grown, I felt like fish and chips particularly has been left behind a little bit. In terms of artisanal seafood, sometimes it can be quite hard to guarantee, line caught fish or really high grade premium fish. So yeah, customers are getting more concerned, which is great.
I think there's a lot more information required about seafood provenance, where it comes from, the true sustainability messages. Sometimes they get a bit blurred with emotions rather than fact, but sometimes when they want to pay for provenance, they don't want to pay for provenance, so it's a balance between behaviours and idealism.
Our consumers have a growing awareness of where their food's coming from and what that means to them. The fishing businesses, the retailers, the restaurateurs, we all have a part to play in that education around provenance, sustainability and the broader range of New Zealand species that are on offer.
Supermarkets, I don't think, are on board with any storytelling, any provenance. I think they should be one of the biggest players in this situation.
Yeah, I think it would really help educate consumers if there were signs on all the fish saying how it was caught and where it was from. And obviously the supermarkets are in a perfect place to enforce that.
Supermarkets are probably the most preferred retail channel option for customers to come and shop seafood in New Zealand. So it makes it very important for us to ensure that any seafood which we are sourcing is ethically and sustainably sourced and farmed. We would not go anywhere near anything which doesn't meet our sustainability requirements.
We actually can't face the truth about where our seafood comes from.
If the public paid more attention to where their seafood comes from, it could drive significant change towards a more sustainable commercial fishing industry. Big shout out to Forest and Bird for their Best Fish Guide, which highlights which species are most at risk from red through to green.
It's up to our generation and all us young people to decide how we eat and be very careful with what we do eat and try and be sustainable with it and make good choices.
So we could pay more attention to the sourcing of our seafood. And when we catch a fish, what are we wasting? Indigenous people have always understood the importance of using the whole fish. We can learn from that.
There are lots of activities underway and trying to ensure that if we do actually remove a fish from the ocean for kai, that we respect, the mana and the mauri of that fish.
If you're doing a sashimi, this you can see here, the top of the fish, the fatter fillet is always going to be your loin.
So another element, of course, is the kai, the food that you're catching.
Yeah.
Tell me about that side of things for you.
Oh, look, that's a huge part for me. I really like food. So when I'm catching fish, A, make sure that no part of the fish is wasted, but B, it gives you the opportunity to cook some fish in some different ways, whether it's baked, ceviche. I've been doing these fish over a rotisserie over charcoal, whether you're using the skin and making snapper crackle. My favourite way, deep fried, snapper wings with tamarind sauce. There's all sorts of things. Last night I call it KFC fish, a bit of fried fish cubed with some panko. I make sure, particularly in spring, so most of these fish we're catching are going to have roe in them, and that roe will be going straight onto my barbecue and straight into my belly.
Alright, mate.
Don't just take the fillets. Don't waste 60 to 70% of the fish. Eat it all. Share it with your community, and that's a way in which we can actually create real value.
We try and use everything. So on the bigger fish, the kingfish, we use the collars. The heads will split. We'll actually cook the heads up for staff meal. We'll scrape the bones back with a spoon and use that for a tartare. We've got a dish on here, which is the fish wings.
Back in the day, we used to just send all our fish home with our punters, and that was the last we saw of it. They'd do their own filleting. These days, we take it to the Kai Ika trailer, and it gets, they do all the filleting, and everything that the customer doesn't want gets handed around the community.
Some people, they don't know how to filleting fish, but that's why I'm here, help them filleting their fish. And I collect all the frame, take it after work to the community. And when I take to the community, they're very happy.
The idea being that we actually take unwanted heads and frames and we share them with Marae around Auckland. So we've just distributed about 100,000 kilos of fish heads in the last 3 years. It's simply waste not, want not. If you don't want these fish heads and frames, give them to somebody who does.
So after we got all the resources, we got a van, we got some bins, and the first pickup 4 o'clock in the morning was 16 kgs. And then, currently to date, we're doing almost 2 tonne, 1.5 tonne a week.
Yeah, these big fresh snappers, beauty. Oh my God.
I think they've recovered almost 170,000 kilograms of fish heads and frames, 170 tonnes.
Thank you very much, Kamihi.
What we're seeing through this process is actually the need in the community, the appetite for this. It's revered and they're really appreciating having access to this fish again.
We're thinking about a drive-through, drive-through fish head, soup, fillet, whatever that looks like. We're just taking it one day at a time. The lines have been going past the roundabout there. We've been told to sort out our traffic management and no Uis on the main road.
Big one in there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Woo.
I come down every Friday to get the kai, the fish, and the connection.
I take my kids fishing and there's no fish bites. So I put on Facebook, anyone that I can get some fish from.
I know it's too expensive out there. Horakinas, you're looking at $30 a pop.
Snapper is so expensive, so I can't afford that.
So we are struggling and the struggle is real, for our whānau. Buy takeaways for the kids. Hour later, they're hungry again.
I fry them and then I boil it with coconut cream and onion.
I love the fish heads. They are a part of our culture. It's a need. It goes back from history.
They are very happy to receive because we give it for them for nothing. They eat a lot of meat. Some people, they get sick, but when they eat the fish head, it's healthy. That's why they're happy.
The conversation we often have is the ordinary world of fast food takeaways. We want to move away from that. Our people want to eat healthy, but some of the things we've identified is accessibility and affordability. And when we get this free taonga fresh kai, it just gets lapped up, right? We can't we're never short on recipients. We're just going back to what we already knew, something that our ancestors have always practiced, and that's about revering the head and eating it all. And so we're happy to be on, with the kaupapa of utilising the whole fish. Yeah, we're hoping that other marae could take it up too, feed their own community and be an example around how we're looking after the environment.
Such simple and beautiful ways of caring for our kaimoana and each other with healthy free alternatives for our tamariki. There is hope. In the next episode we look at the human psyche. What's holding us back from being our best? Has our need for a feed turned into greed?